and this is a quick story about how you have to rethink things. When we had, in 2008, this was a $425 million project, and we only had $18 million to raise to finish the entire project in philanthropy, the entire project, including capitalizing the first 3 years of operation. $18 million in 4 years, that's all we had to raise. And then the world changed in 2008, and boy did it ever impact this project. So what happened is $120 million was delayed from the Tourist Development Council's funding of the project. And we were sitting at, we brought our board and our major donors together because we had to make a decision, and this goes back to conviction, and this is also going to the design schedule, which Craig asked about, which is completing the building. So we said, okay, let's, the 120 million, these are all ideas. Let's go over to the Bob Carr, let's make that a little bit better, and we'll do a building over there. Well, then someone said, well, that changes the mission, changes the vision, changes the institution. Then someone said, okay, well, why don't we just make a better Bob Carr here and just do one hall and a small hall? And then our donor said, well, that also changed the vision of the institution. You know, and the program, the content, the program is going to be changed. And so every time someone came up to the idea, a donor or a board member said, you know, we set out to do this because we wanted to do it right, and it's about the content, it's not really about checking it off. And so then someone said, why don't we just cut part of the building off? Because it's delayed, it's not gone. It's going to cost more. We know it's going to cost more because it's delayed. So let's just cut part of the building off. At that point, a huge dynamic on our project, our architect went off the ranch. He said, oh my gosh, you're going to cut this building in half. This is my last project. It's going to, you know, oh my God. So he now is off the ranch, and then someone said, you know.
That's a nice way to put it, but.
Yeah.
But, no, but I mean, seriously, Barton is a great guy, world-class architect. So we had spent years, many visits to California.
Years.
In the studio. Kathy and Jim are hands-on, I mean, down to the chair rail and the tile in the bathroom and everything. And you're paying architects sometimes have egos. And so you're paying this architect to design this building. He's attached to the project. He's married to Barton's 70-something,
so
if he's not 80.
5, yeah.
And this is his last deal. It's his, and then we showed up and said, you know what? We love you, and we're going to cut the building in half. Mm-hmm. So that, off the ranch really was freak out.
It was. He did. And just managing that was tough because we chose Barton. When we interviewed our design architects, we had architects, world-class architects come in. Bob Stern, Robert Stern came in and he said, look, I love the city of Orlando. As a matter of fact, if you picked my design for City Hall, your city would look like this. And he pulled down this beautiful rendering of what the Orlando city would look like and said, your city would have taken this direction in its architecture. Stunningly gorgeous architecture. We didn't choose that path. He said, this building is that relevant. And I'd like for you to pick, you know, we would love to do this project. But in reality, I'm only going to give you about 10% of my time, and let me introduce you to your team. Mm-hmm. Barton was the other way. He said, I am your design architect, and you have me 90% of the time. And he came to every single meeting. He never missed a meeting because he was, and that's the architect we wanted. Mm-hmm. And so when we say he went off the ranch, he totally did because he was the design architect. He was, you know, it wasn't a staff that we could go to. He took off. But the dynamic there is, at the end of that meeting, someone said, you know, this building's going to look a little bit ridiculous because it's not finished. And it was not even a minute. It was like a second beat, and someone said, good, because if it did look finished, it would never get finished. And so that was it was a very bold move, and I have to give a great deal of admiration and a shout out to Buddy Dyer because as an elected official, you don't want something that you build to look unfinished. As a mayors build. Philanthropies build institutions within cities, but the mayors are the ones that actually build buildings, if they're good building mayors. And so, again, that was the testament to the board for staying the course. So where we are in stage 2, and what you've heard in the media, is the impact of the delay of the TDT impacted the project $75 million. I can just give you exactly down to the dollar of why. We had to cut the building in half. When we cut the building in half, we had to stop the project, but we had to keep the intellectual capital on the project. We couldn't let the team go, so we're holding them. We're cutting the building in half, trying to make a decision what to do. we have to redo the buildings, we have to redo the cost estimate, and the real trick was we didn't design the building to cut it in half. And they're not easy buildings to cut in half because of acoustics and operations and those kinds of things. So that took about a year. Then to get the project started again, that's a whole year of delay, and holding the intellectual capital was really tough. And then we're getting ready to try to begin construction on stage 1, and a new election comes in, and for all the right reasons, a new mayor wants to be participative in something that they're funding, and so they have questions. This project has been through 3 different economies. It's kind of going back and looking about how you're raising your children. Would you have done it the same way, knowing what you know now? Probably, but you did the best you could at the time because that was the right climate for that decision, right? Same thing with this project. So again, we had to delay the project again, and eventually we got the project started. So it was roughly about 2 years of delay. That impacted the project by $75 million, along with escalation of building materials and other aspects of the project. So for stage 2, we had $120 million coming to the project, plus we had to raise about $75 million. So when you heard that number, $75 million, that's not the cost of stage 2. The cost of stage 2 is the balance of the tourist development tax and about $75 million. The other thing we did is when we announced that we were going to begin construction on stage 1, it wasn't completely funded. And so we have really VE'd and taken out a great deal of a lot of the essential components in stage 1 that has to be part of this completion campaign, which is interesting because from an elected official perspective, and it's the right move, you have to stand up and say stage 1's paid for. And it is from a construction perspective at the bare bones.
Right.
So it'll be open, but we still have funding to raise for stage 1 and stage 2. So to complete your question, is stage 2, our goal for stage 2 is actually to have that under construction the same year that we open the building. And we have 2 challenge grants, or 2 challenge gifts to the project. Dr. Phillips Charities said they would contribute another $10 million if we have the balance of the funding raised by the end of 2015. Orange County is coming forth, and we need your support on this. It's going through approval now. Mayor Jacobs said we're going to consider another $25 million to help offset that impact of the TDT delay, but you have to have the funding raised by the end of 2014. So that's $35 million challenge to raise $40 million by the end of 2014 and to get the project started. So the same year we open, we're going to begin construction to finish the project.
So in a perfect world, the project will never stop. It will just roll, so it'll end up being a longer project than we anticipated. But that's important to think about, because if you stop to go start again, I mean, this is all just sort of construction methodology, but I mean, once you demobilize and shut a site down and people get too used to it being one way, I do think we are going to face some challenges. So we've sort of tried to string this thing out as long as we can, but still keep it as one thing. And so the ideal solution would be if we opened in the second half of next year, and then we were able to take that momentum and roll on into starting the following year. That would be ideal. And we, without oversimplifying, we're trying to time. You're always trying to time economic recovery and sponsorships and donors and all that stuff. So there's no secret that's what we're trying to do. When you hit a patch like you did of the Great Recession, and you had budgeted for fundraising and all this stuff, and you're unable to do that, you have to redo timing when very wealthy people are saying, I love the project, I'm committed to it, but here's what my balance sheet looks like today, and here's what it might look like when the real estate business or let's face it, a lot of the donors in Orlando are in that business. It might look like when the market recovers. So we don't ever say it quite that blatantly, but in some ways we are just trying to time the market such that you can match up sort of sources and uses in a way that'll work for us. So these conversations take way longer than they should, because it's actually that simple that you're really just trying to match sources and uses. But when you layer in the political part of it, these are conversations we have for hours at the board and executive committee level, because you are just always sort of figuring this stuff out.